Hey listener, welcome to 1000 Routes. I'm your host, Nick Bennett. In each episode, we explore the uncommon paths of solopreneurs who have bet on themselves and the reality of what it takes to build a business that serves your life. Enjoy the episode.
So my name's Kendall Cherry, and I'm the founder and creative director here at the Candid Collective. And we're on a mission to create a world that's more candid and kind.
Hell yeah. You beat the rush to solopreneurship. Do you know that?
Yes.
Do you realize this?
Yes.
2021. What was going on for you back then? I know you were at HP for a while, and then what was the turning point for you?
Well, so I think for me, just for some background here, I grew up very blue collar. So my dad was a firefighter. My mom was a preschool teacher. And it is interesting. I didn't know a lot about nepotism. When I was starting, I just had this corporate job that I hated, but I basically was the first in my family to go white collar. I was the first person in my family to get a master's degree, first person in my family to get a 6-figure salary. And so I had hit the, what all your parents want you to have when you're a kid, right? I'd hit every level of success and it was fine. I was promoting extremely quickly. They groomed me to be a VP and I was really good at my job and really good at playing the game, but I just felt like I was missing something. I felt like I kept missing part of myself. And so as far as corporate goes, I was crushing it, but on the inside, I just was I can't even put up. I was there for about 5.5 years. I just didn't even think I could put up with another day or, year at that point. This was also, I'd started my first business. I thought I was going to be a career coach because I'd get all these people asking me, and they were always older than me, how are you promoting so quickly? So I figured I would just get paid for all the free coffee chats I was giving people in a corporate cubicle. That's what I was trying to do. I thought I was going to hack the system. And so I started this first business in December of 2019. Okay. I know nothing about online business. And then, of course, we all know what happens in 2020. I didn't think I was going to have an online business at all. That was not my jam. And then COVID quickly changed that for me. But I just always knew that I needed to do something else. And I didn't quite know what it was going to be. I had no other entrepreneurs around me. So I was deeply embedded in just corporate life. And so doing it was a very lonely process, very exploratory, but also, I don't know, I just kind of knew that there was something different for me. And a term that I found out about later on was something called an intrapreneur. So that's somebody who builds internal programs, which is kind of what I was doing. I would build an HR program or a training program. I'd have to go sell it to all the executives of why they needed it. I didn't know this was what I was doing, of course, but I kind of learned that term and I realized my last project was an ERP implementation. So it's basically the entire back end of a big company like HP. It's IT, it's finance, it's operations, it's literally everything. And so I was kind of learning how a business works from behind the scenes. And I don't know, I just kind of would look around and be if these people are at, 50, 60 years old and they're doing this, I was I'm pretty sure I can do this. I think I could start my own business. And so, started a career coaching business, was able to leave my full-time job, with that. And then first business failed about 6 months later. And it was, trying to figure out something else to make my rent payments and pay my bills. And I had a background as an executive ghostwriter at HP. And so I just figured I'm a writer. What if I had a very, very small audience. It was probably 300 people, maybe even less. And so the day I decided okay, I guess we're going to do some writing. And it was honestly supposed to be just a little short-term thing until I found out what I wanted to do next. Literally within the first month, I had a 10K month and it's been off to the races ever since then. So it was kind of fluky, but then it was also kind of in hindsight, always aligned for me as well.
I love this. So just to make sure I got the timeline right, you're still working full time. You start this career coaching thing on the side, try to figure out if this will work, build up enough clientele or confidence or a combination of all the things. And you said, time to go all in on this thing. 6 months later, you say it failed. I probably feel you learned something and it wasn't an actual failure. What happened there?
Yeah. So, it took me keep in mind, I did not go to business school and I didn't do anything in direct sales at the time, didn't know how to write sales copy, nothing. So it literally took me 8 months to experiment around enough. Like career coaching wasn't really working. During a brief experiment, it took me 8 months to sell anything. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out, how can I make some money because Kendall's got to leave. Somehow I decided that because I was in an IT job that I could build software. And not only could I build software, I could build a whole mind body, like how you book for a gym, for a cheerleading gym. I do not cheerlead. I do not build software, but I had convinced somebody that I could just figure it out and do it. And so that was my first client. 8 months in, that was a rough go. And then I ended up, and it again all comes full circle. When I ended up leaving, I was coaching people on how to batch work content and how to basically create a bunch of content in one go. That's how I ended up making enough money to leave. So I sold like a few, I think it was probably 6 or 7 coaching spots one-on-one. I'd had a few people pay in full. And so that was what created the cash for me to be able to leave. Didn't know anything about sales pipelines, didn't know anything about, even sales content or copy. So it was all kind of manual at the time. And so my client roster, dried up and I didn't have enough energy to kind of do the coaching thing. That's when I realized that my real zone of genius is in the writing and in the done for you writing, not in coaching and consulting. And I was like drained to the max after just, I think, 5 or 6 coaching calls a week. So I didn't have any more capacity to have any more clientele or market my business. And so that's kind of what caused everything to implode. But again, looking back, it ended up being a really good lesson where I thrive when I'm doing done for you and done for you writing specifically.
Sometimes in the beginning of doing all this stuff, it's like you second guess a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm curious, what were some of the things that you were second guessing, like as you were going through that?
Oh, the biggest one I think for me at the time was I'd always wanted to do some kind of writing. Like but I was not the kid that had this big dream of like writing a book or like being a New York Times bestseller. That just was never on my radar, but I was always good at writing. And that was just something that my teachers recognized in me. And I just remember even when the thought came up of like, okay, you need to make some money. Wouldn't it be cool if you could write? Like it was always that. And I think in our society, we have this thing I write about a lot called the starving artist narrative, where anytime you see any kind of like writer, creative type, they're penniless, they're broke. If they're a business owner, they can't keep the lights on. And so it was just kind of this narrative that I just really believed for the longest time. And then eventually I was like, you know what, this doesn't apply to me. And I think this was well before, creator economy had even really kicked off. And so, and even before COVID, but I just knew, or kind of mid-COVID, that I just knew like, okay, I think there's something here. I know that the writing, there's like something magnetic about it for me. So like, what if I just leaned in and kind of figured out what that could look like and not really knowing what the next step was, but knowing it feels good in the moment. So I might as well try and see what it could look like.
I like this. I like the starving artist thing you're talking about here, because my friend Elise LeMay always talks about this idea of, she's like, I feel guilty if I like don't bleed for the words either. Like it's a part of the whole process. Where it's like, it can't be simple or easy, or it feels like I'm doing something wrong if it is simple or easy, if it comes naturally to me, because of that starving artist narrative that you're talking about. Like being good at it means you don't actually need to bleed for it, and you don't need it. I think it's super fascinating, this idea of like, well, if I'm going to be a writer, I have to struggle.
Mm-hmm. And it's true in it's especially if you're in some kind of service providery area, it's almost always the case that starving artist narrative kind of like leads over to those areas as well. I see it in graphic designers. I see it in consultants, where if it's not the doing the work thing, it's the over complexity of the offers, or it's the, we need, 15,000 options or whatever else. Like it doesn't actually get to be as simple as like, it's your specific brain or your specific eyes on a problem. And it's just that magic that you have that no one else can replicate. And it's not for everyone. And that is the magic of it. And I think we lose that a lot in this like kind of, LinkedIn rat race, right? Everyone thinks they've got the number one best thing. But if we step back there are literally billions of people. I don't remember the exact number now, like how many people are on LinkedIn, but there are abundant clients out there. There's enough clients. And especially if you're a service provider type, it's not like you need to sell 500 units of client work. We're talking about 20 people a year, right? Like the thing I think about a lot is like my audience right now is about like 7,000 followers all in across the internet. Literally, just to like run some numbers. If I converted 1% of my audience, my business would be extremely lucrative. 1%. So it's like people, I think, get so obsessed with this like more, quantity, whatever. And it doesn't matter. It's more about the quality of what you're doing and making sure that your service is, one, designed the way you want it to run, and two, told in a way where for the people that are the right fit for you, they're attracted to that. And also the people that are not the right fit, they're repelled and they're like, hell no, like either it's too expensive or you're not the right vibe, whatever the reason is. But we get so caught up in this idea that like you have to have this one perfect way of doing things that it causes us to dull the thing that makes us as service providers our like number one selling point, which is you and the way that your brain and your hands and your art or whatever like solves the problem at hand.
I could not agree more. And I've thought about this a lot. And I'm pretty sure it's because all the biggest people, all the biggest solos or creators, everyone sees them being a big creator in selling, having a big audience and selling traffic-based programs or products or whatever. So they're like, it's a low ticket, low maturity, high volume. And they're like, oh, build a big audience. Like Justin Welsh is kind of like the guy in that space that everyone like occupies everyone's mind. And when they think about this stuff and they're like, oh, sell $150 course, make millions. Like, let's do it. Publish nonstop, be omnipresent. But what you just said is what I keep telling people, which is like, you need like 10 people a year to say yes, like a year. Like, and maybe if you're lucky or if you're good, they'll stick around. And then you need like 4 people or 3 people a year to say yes.
Yeah. Customer retention is like lifetime value of the customer. That is your gravy train, baby. Like it's true. But I think the thing is, my thought with these courses and stuff, I haven't really bought any from these big creators, but I see them and or I've like, seen behind the scenes of these places. My question is, how big are the transformations for those customers who are at the $150 price point? Because most of the time it's like regurgitated stuff, or there's some tricky upsell funnel or whatever else, or you're like paying to play or be in a certain room with people. And it actually causes less clarity on the thing that the people need to create more sales. I don't think most people realize, I get a lot of clients that come to me after, I call it like, course creator PTSD. They've taken all of these courses and they're like, why didn't this work for me? Or like, I want to be like this person. And they'll like send me the sales page of like one of the, the LinkedIn baddies basically. And I'm like, 1, this person's been in the game for 10 years. 2, they have a shitload of marketing budget and they're doing paid ads. Like that's the secret. And you don't have budget.
They have 10 people helping them.
They have literally 10 people behind the scenes who are literally sales reps combing the comments. Like there are entire infrastructures set up like this. Like you're still like, you're not there. And also it's like comparing apples to like cucumbers. It's not even in the same wheelhouse. So that's my thing is I'll sometimes get clients there and I have to do a lot of like, usually by the time people get to me and at inquiry, like they're well aware of kind of my style of selling, my style of what I do, which is really aligned with what you do. A lot of my clients are looking to make more money, work less hours, and not be on sales calls. And so that's usually why people, work with me. But it's the same idea where like you don't have to be this big behemoth, because you like realistically also like client execution wise, like fulfillment wise, you literally are one person. Like you're not going to have enough hours on the calendar to do it. So I don't know, hot takes there, but that's how I think about it.
I mean, we have a similar approach because I don't see the point in trying to hammer away from zero every month selling even $50, $150, $500, $1,000. Like I've tried it. And you can make decent money, but it's super lumpy. It's frustrating. There's a lot of things about it that I just don't think work well for the vast majority of people. my personal perspective is like build top down.
The way I think about it too, that I don't know that a lot of service providers realize this. When you have a lower cost product, you better be a damn good product manager. Like you got to be, and it is a completely different set of like style of brain. It is a completely different way of selling. And you have got to be so fucking tight. Like if you don't know, because there's ton of their products that are, same as yours. So what's your differentiator? If you are not willing to be that experimental, like you're not going to have like a successful launch, and you got to be down to do it for years before it finally, pops off, quote unquote. But I don't think service providers realize it. Like that's why I don't build courses. I'm working on a book this year that was originally going to be a certification and a course. And when I got into it, I was like, the idea of fucking selling this thing and not just for, I can record videos for the internal content all day. The idea of like developing a product and then having to fucking sell and create all the other stuff and all the funnels and whatever else, like, hell no. Like I'm an evergreen girl.
Your main business suffers.
Your main business that pays your bills. Like I'm an evergreen girl. Like I will be that way for the longest time. I will do book launches or like product launches, quote unquote, when a book launches, but it is not nearly like there's less. I think people care more about not getting their money's worth for a $150 product than they do for a $20,000 offer. And the thing for me is even the retention with books, like people finish books, courses, ain't nobody finish. I don't forget what the numbers are, but they're extremely low.
Yeah, 100% agree. I have this idea of like the probability of success, and it's very simple. People think that they're trying to charge people for all the value that's in a thing. They're like, this course should be worth $1,000. And they try to sell for that. And I'm like, but that's not where the value or the price tag of the thing comes from. It comes from how likely they are to be successful with the thing. So to your point, you're like, people at least will finish a book, but even if they do or they don't, the probability of being successful after reading a book is like as low as it could possibly be. Then you have a course. It's slightly higher because there's more nuance, there's more context, maybe you have more different formats and mediums, like there's videos and there's other examples, like you have more depth to it. So you can charge a little more. So like there's a step there. Then there's cohorts and groups and whatever else. Like I can see the ladder of professional services as close to the guarantee, close to 100% success rate as possible, which is why it's worth the most. And for some reason, people kind of have this flipped upside down. I talked to some massive creators on this show, and they'll be the first to tell you that if they don't market their ebook or their course, it doesn't sell. There's no such thing as passive, no matter how many followers you have. Like maybe 1 or 2 people will buy it, but $300 a month versus whatever your services can bring in is a totally, like it's not worth it. And then you take your eye off the prize and then you start selling down market. It becomes a vicious spiral. But I could talk about this all day. What I want to know more about though is the first time you felt like, hey, I think this could work. Like the initial traction you felt, because you've pivoted a bunch of times from the coach to a agency to a fractional CMO to the ghostwriter. And like, to be clear, I'm a huge fan of pivots. I've pivoted many times myself. I love that you're not afraid to do it. I think too many people are way too afraid to do it. Like my co-founder, Erica Schneider, always says, it's like, if you pivot, just pivot out loud and people will pivot with you. It's like not that hard, but it can also be super frustrating. So like, I'm curious to hear from you when you finally kind of gained the traction you were looking for. Talk me through a little bit of that. What was that like?
Yeah. What's interesting about my, pivot journey, we'll call it, is there was always the golden thread of I was still always writing for clients. So for me, what was behind a lot of the pivot was me trying to outsmart myself and thinking like, oh, well, I'm writing for people, but if I offer fractional CMO because they're asking me all these questions anyway, then I can charge more. And so it was kind of this trap of like, okay, I'll still write, but if I offer some kind of consulting, which if we remember, my sneaky energy drain is, consulting and coaching calls or being in Slack so often that it pretty much feels that way with my clients. That ended up being kind of this epiphany that I had. So I always had the sturdy foundation that everything was writing based, but the kind of, maneuvering around it was either like, oh, I'm only one person, so I'm going to have a team around me, which was helpful. And that it taught me how to teach my style of writing, which is very different than most like content writers who are just writing, LinkedIn's greatest hits. Like I'm writing in a way that's selling content or that's selling services usually for B2B and B2C service providers is typically what I do, but there's kind of a process to it. It's a content funnel. It's based in storytelling, but I really use the agency as a way to kind of quickly rapid test not only what was working because we had more volume, but also how I would actually teach this to people so that they could understand it. So that was a beneficial like exercise and experiment, but there was always like that done for you element, which is what sustained over time. But that's also what created a lot of my income ceiling as well, was getting caught in the consulting, the coaching sides of the service oriented industry that just weren't like, they were profitable from like a cash perspective, but from a time and an energy perspective, they were draining me.
You're saying operating as the agency.
Any of it. Like for me, any of the kind of coaching, consulting style stuff that I would do for clients, or when I had an agency, I was teaching writers. That was the thing that was secretly kind of zapping my life force and my energy, was all of the extra consulting, or people had a lot of questions they were asking, instead of me just being like, nope, clean process. Like it's just me. We're zipping through stuff. I'm opening a doc and it gets delivered. It was all the like back and forth interpersonal. I know I don't seem introverted, but I'm pretty introverted. So all of that kind of social back and forth ended up being a lot for me to manage on top of the writing, because writing work as well, it's one of those things where, if I have a podcast interview, I don't feel like writing after. So you've got to have a very strategically planned schedule to like get deep into the work, and doing all of that kind of like context switching between different tasks and calls was really kind of getting to me over time.
Yeah, the context switching is probably the number one drain of life force on the planet. Like I have recently made a more concerted effort to like, I hate everyone's like, oh, time blocking, but just like, hey, I recognize when I'm most creative, when I'm best for my clients, like let's just put the time in the call at that time. Let's just bake it into the cake instead of just trying to jump from this to that to this to that. But one thing you're saying, which is a totally different skill set, right? Like you being a great writer is very different from you being a great manager, which is really what a lot of I think like what you're describing on the complete other end of the spectrum is the delegation part of this work. Right? Like, how do I coach people or get them to do the thing, especially as you try to operate it more as a quote unquote agency, whether you have contractors or employees or whatever you want, however you choose to interface with them. The whole point is that you have to get them to do a thing for you at the quality you want. It takes a lot of effort and a totally different skill set. But then you look and you go, well, it's just faster if I do it myself, which there's pros and cons, because you're like, well, there's a limit to how much I can just do myself. Totally. The question is the limit, are you happy with that limit as a business owner? And some people, the limit is like, whatever, it's not high enough and they have to do it and they have to bring in other people. So how did you work through that though?
Yeah. So honestly, one of the things that I think is a completely, I'll say, underrated resource that most solo service providers need to have on their team is some kind of operational person who is directing the trains. So I'd experimented with this a few times in the business. I've had different scopes of people. I've had online business managers who are actually managing the agency. So I was kind of playing this editor-in-chief role, and they were kind of the back and forth between clients, back and forth between teams. So I was kind of only interacting for the big stuff. So I had that at the agency, which was helpful. I've also had a collection of like ops specialists or VAs, but I actually hired someone a few months ago, which has been the most transformative, at least as far as like that outsourcing and delegation goes. And this person is more of a business strategist, but they're also kind of they're like the best combination of a COO, a CFO, and a CRO, where I have my first company, the ghostwriting stuff. I have a second company that I guess we're technically in stealth mode still, but it's basically a publishing house for all of my books that I'm producing. So we're working on my first one this year, but I have a second company we're building out this year. And it's basically having somebody else to take me out. So I hired somebody probably 2 months ago who's kind of the best combination of a COO, CRO, CFO. And I was just struggling to be like, look, like I quite literally, like I've scaled back all my marketing, like all my marketing is fucking dialed, like all that's great. And I don't know how to solve the magic number of whatever we need to make from a revenue perspective so I can pay my salary. And I'm literally developmentally editing a book this summer. So like I'm quite literally splitting my time. I don't know how to solve that on my calendar. I don't know how to solve that with the client, pipeline, whatever else. So like my brain, that is not my zone of genius. I'm very business, like I have a lot of business chops just like intuitively, but they're just become.
Well, you run a business.
Yeah, I run a business. Like I've done well.
Figure stuff out at some point, right?
Yeah, like done well for myself. But there's just a certain point where I'm like, okay, this is now too complex for my brain. And it is quite literally draining me from client work and book work. So if we're going to do this, which this is a non-negotiable, like we're publishing my books, we're writing for clients. So that's a non-negotiable. I just can no longer hold it when my business has this much complexity in it. So I hired somebody who has been incredible, like getting our financial planning like set up, which to levels I'm like, I've never even come close to being that organized with and like thoughtfully planned ahead, where I'm just like, wait, you can do that? Like, I just feel like I'm like Han Solo, in the universe, just out here. I'll do whatever it takes.
This is the great aha of being a solopreneur, is that like no one is totally alone,
and you shouldn't be.
As much as we would like to believe. Like, how did you find this person?
So they were actually a client of mine. So I was writing for her. I was actually going to hire somebody else, and they kind of botched the client inquiry stage. Like they were just like taking forever to get back to me with proposals. They would take like over a week to get back to me. And I'm like, I'm literally hiring you to like give you the reins in my business. Like huge red flag. Like if you can't get back to me in a week, no. And I will say I do have a little bit more of a extreme view on this because I don't really do that many sales calls, and like our internal stuff is pretty tight. So operationally, I can get back to people within, a few hours. So that was just really rubbing me the wrong way because I'm a very agile person as well. And so that one didn't work out. And I was like, holy fuck, like we got to find somebody because it's not me. Like this is not a pull yourself from the, bootstraps moment. And so I'd actually been writing a services guide for this client. And I'm like sitting here writing and I'm like, maybe I need Melissa, whatever. Maybe I need Melissa, And then as I like get into it, I'm like, dude, like you need to hire Melissa. And so I approached her for a conversation to see is this something you could help me with? And just kind of talking through the problems that we were having. And yeah, she was just like the best person. And I already kind of knew her too, especially I needed a specific type of skill set as well, where I knew I needed somebody that had more, like we're going to have to set up a different LLC and a separate entity. And like, there's just it's a little bit different than just like standard operational, just getting stuff set up. So I knew I needed somebody to kind of build with me for that. And that was going to be here for the long term. But there was also just like a lot of weird, like, I don't know, energetic stuff happening too. Like I sign every email, stay gold. That's just how I do it. That's my thing. And her last name is Rose. And so when we like decided we were going to do this like partnership thing and like partner together, I was like, oh my God, we're like making Rose gold. And I was like, holy fuck. So I always have these like cool little like moments like that in the business that kind of point to the right decision. But it's been like, take my expectations of what I thought it was going to be like. And I was like, I'm at least going to get stuff off my plate, and just the level of even just strategic planning where I can be, I think because I'm a very confident person and I'm a pretty direct person, I can be a tough client where like I've had OBMs in the past where we would, kind of butt heads or like we would kind of argue, and I'm classic visionary. And so what I appreciate about Melissa as well is she will push back on my ideas and be like, no. Or she'll give me sales goals. She'll be like, we can do that project once you hit this. we will execute this thing. Like, this is a great idea for July. Let's hold off until these things happen. Where normally, if it were just me, I would just go run off, build the thing, and then be disappointed when it flopped, versus like having a little bit more strategic and like patience and intention. So even just having someone who I'm not really scared of her, but like a little bit intimidated by, we're like, okay, I call her boss. We're like, yes, boss, tell me the sales number. I can go and crush a sales goal, but like put the bumpers on.
I love this because we're cut from the same cloth. At my last job, my VP would always joke. She's like, my job is to keep Nick between the cones. Like she was very integrated to my visionary, and I was doing a lot of things. And it's like, I guess chase the shiny is what it is. I like, as much as
you hate to admit it, but
I hate to admit it. Yeah. Sometimes you get shiny object.
There's a strategy and a plan.
Yeah. And so we'd always joke that like her job was just keep me between the cones. And I think that's what you're describing, Melissa, is for you. It's a game changer. It really is. I mean, even to have a co-founder like that I have in Erica now, and it changes the way that you operate, because, well, just that little bit of bureaucracy in that, like, I have to talk to somebody else about this because it's important for them to know, is the friction, the good type of friction you need in your business to not just kind of like float away.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're driving on the highway and you like kind of veer off the road and you get those little like
the bumpies.
You get the bumpies. Like you could still be moving on your path, but like, let's just slow it down just to check like a little bit. And most of the time too, because she's super creative and understands my brain as well. Half the time, like she's coming up with stuff that like makes my ideas even better and more executable and more profitable. So like at this point, when they present like that, I'm like, I'm going to let you, like, this is my idea. You go run off and then come back and let me know what you think. And that's why I'm always like, all right, boss, got it. Like, give me a punch list on Friday. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like that kind of thing. And in exchange, like she even will like plans my calendar and everything. She's like, you're going to get 3 days this week for the book. Like she gets excited for that. We're like, that's the thing I want to work on the most right now. And so like really also just having someone to celebrate your wins with too, I think, because it can be such a drag if it's just you. And that's what I experienced for a long time. We like human celebrations. We like to share seafood towers when we celebrate with other humans.
I can totally relate to all of this because a big theme, it's interesting, I'm sure you see this too, is like there's generally a theme comes up in like all your client work at the same time and they all kind of cycle through together. A theme I see a lot right now is this concept of, I'll wrap it up because there's a popular book about this, like this idea of buying back your time, which is kind of, I think, the thing that you're describing here. Managing your calendar isn't your superpower, and it is not the best use of your time, or doing all of these other administrative tasks is not the best use of your time as a writer, as like, that's not your core competency. And the best way to create space in your client roster, or at least your ability to generate revenue, is to offload all of that stuff. And as like frustrating as that process is, or it's like kind of, it's so obvious that it's non-obvious for so many people. It's like, just don't do that stuff. Try to find someone else who can help you with that stuff.
Yeah. But the jinx to it a little bit is like, it does get worse before it gets better.
It's a super frustrating transitional period.
It's a super, because you're like, well, I could do it faster, or like they have a million questions or whatever. And it's like, well, they probably have a million questions, Kendall, because you didn't document anything, because you're a little agile person that just...
Because you're a helium balloon. That's what my wife always jokes.
Yeah. And you just zip around. And so like nobody knows what you're doing behind the scenes. And so understanding that it may be like, 90 days before things really feel like just like they're smoothing out, but also like just like racking up if you're kind of in that exploration right now with somebody, or if you're considering it, just remember everything that person's touching, even if it's messy in the beginning, every like single thing that they're touching is something that they're eventually going to hold. And I think that's super important to remember. So even if it's like, a little bit of a transition, like eventually they should be the one like kind of managing that, so you get that back. So even if it's like you got to suck it up for 90 days, like it's worth it once you kind of get through that onboarding period.
Thank you for saying this. Like, seriously, like I, even having gone through this myself, I never looked back on it in that way. I always got to that transition period where I was like, this is frustrating.
This sucks. Yeah. This is
And
the
I go
worst.
through like a couple rounds. I try to document stuff more clearly. And for some reason, the way that I'm not the greatest manager, like I never did the manager thing. I always did the high performing senior level in IC, like, but I never really did the manager thing. I even tried to circumvent it, like in all of my roles in life. Like I would do, like when I was in retail, it would be like key holder. So you're like, you have manager privileges, but you don't have to manage
Yeah,
people.
you're
Like,
special.
yeah. So it's like, I literally tried to circumvent this in all of the things in my life of delegating and training and doing all this stuff. And now it's become a big part of my life and recognizing that it will get worse before it gets better. Like the thing that takes you 5 minutes will take you 10, and that's super frustrating. Or more, or you got to get on. Like there's so many things, and it's also expensive because the vast majority of people who do that type of work, the administrative VA stuff, bill you by the hour. And so not only are they billing,
Yeah, you're like resentful. You're like, are you messing this up because you want to get paid more? You're like, I've been there. I've had those thoughts. You're like, what the fuck are we doing here?
I personally, my thought was like, I'm just paying double because I told you how to do it, but I told you how to do it wrong. So that's on me. And now I have to show you how to do it again. And now like, I'm just paying you twice. And like, so yes, I think
if I were an operations service provider and I were going to create a sales ankle, I'd be like, there's so much time saved there of just being able to like how much time are you getting off your plate there is huge when you think about that.
I took a long weekend, and the long weekends tend to coincide with big things happening in business, like sign a few clients, got to do onboarding stuff, whatever, making sure. And of course, it's like all happening on like a Thursday afternoon while I'm out doing stuff. And I'm like, if there was only someone who could do this, who could help me with this.
Automate it with tech, baby. Or have someone you can just quickly box and be like, hey, Melissa, this is the thing. Can you send this to the person? Incredible. It's worth it.
Yeah. These are like the points of friction that create the capacity in your business. So like, I'm curious, how many clients can you ghostwrite for at one time? And I understand you're writing the book now. So like that is technically a client that takes up capacity.
A lot of this is a choice. So a lot of this is like my income expectations, and I'm at a certain level now. I think we have maybe 6 clients on retainer, maybe 8, depending on the month. And then every once in a while we'll get project-based stuff, or we'll sell like a couple of my smaller, like $500 offer. But on retainer, I think it's anywhere from like 6 to 8.
Yeah, I saw you're booked out till August in a recent post. So like, that's awesome too. Very few people look at their capacity and plan it in that way where they're like, I can do no more. We've hit the ceiling. And then the question is how do you either make more capacity or just accept that, hey, enough is enough?
I think that little capacity floater, we'll call it, that is actually something I keep in every email footer. I call it like a billboard footer. I put it in posts every once in a while, but technically I'll put it this way. If the right project comes along, or, we want to take it on, like it's never a surefire, like 100% out thing. Like I'm usually booked about 60 to 70% of the time, because I get last minute stuff every once in a while too, or clients will ask for extra stuff. But that, even you being aware, like, oh, Kendall posts her availability, super helpful if you're a service provider. Not that we're here like tell you what to do. Knowing your capacity, even if it's not 100%, but posting about it consistently creates scarcity and urgency in a way that is very ethical and less like hounding. And it gives people an idea of like, oh, if I want to work with Nick, then, he's booked at least 2 months in advance. Like I need to book, pay in advance. Like we take payment plans and deposits for people. That is a really helpful, like just kind of marketing ploy. I think I do it in every email as well. But that way for people who are in the pipeline, but are maybe not ready to convert this summer, but they know this fall, like, and I hear this a lot from clients, will say like, I've had your name in my journal for 3 years and now I'm finally ready to work with you. Or, they know that I'm the right resource. Having that availability, especially if you tend to get booked, like for me, the fall, late summer, early fall is like usually really big. So I just post it now, but it's a retention thing. So people know and can expect, when you're going to be booked out and when you're not, and what openings look like. So that in and of itself is just a little hack there, but that's a really helpful little marketing tool that I love to have out there.
Well, it works, and it's worked for you. It's worked for me too. I mean, I think the lesson that I always try to like remind myself of is like, and this is it just in the obverse. It's like, just, you have to ask for what you want and
just put it out there.
And just put it out there. Like, a lot of times people don't realize that if you just ask people by saying, hey, we're at capacity, or I can work with one more person until this time, or by whatever the thing is, just the simple act of asking gets you so much further than you could possibly imagine. And there's nothing that comes off as, because people are afraid of looking desperate. Like they don't see people they admire doing things like that. But I think that there's also it's just a very real thing. Like, here's a very matter of fact statement.
It's just business.
It's not like I'm discounting my services for people because I'm desperate.
No, we don't do discount. It's a self-worth thing, and it's aligned action. Even if it feels weird being like I've had times where I'll be like, hey, I have an opening on my calendar, for 2 weeks from now. Like, this never really happens if you have something on your list that you want. And I have people book it because they know that they need it, or, whatever else, because they think I'm normally booked out. Like, and we live in a world where like algorithms, if you're on LinkedIn, like they control a lot of like your content visibility. So it could be the case that some people just haven't been seeing your content. Like, there's too many like fluky reasons why something wouldn't work. So that's why I think the belief that, okay, if I create this opportunity, something's going to land and drop in, that is a huge part of the other kind of like less tactical, logical side of business that I think like there is some merit to there.
Well, one thing you do, which I also really like, is that your services guide is gated. It's like your main tripwire offer. You've talked about how like that's the greatest thing that you ever did, because not only is
that is the best lead magnet.
I mean, it makes so much sense, because all it does is it gets people who are just about ready, but they're not a hand raiser, right? They're not reaching out to inbound, and then they're on your email list, so they're going to just get perpetually nurtured.
I don't know why we're not all doing the services guide thing. When I closed my agency, that services guide, the format that it's on, if you're curious what it is, it's candidcollective.co/services-guide. If you're curious what's in that thing, that PDF, the same flow, the same design, maybe changing out some slides at the back with different offers or, whatnot. That exact same PDF has been the same since January of 2023. It has closed. I cannot tell you how much business. It has been my website when I closed my agency and I didn't have the money to build a new website with my own thing. So that was like quite literally my web quote unquote presence, was like just that sign up thing. And it consistently closes clients. I've had the crazy conversion stories where even like you might think people sign up, maybe they're not ready. I've closed 81K in 10 days from a services guide, from someone hanging out in the LinkedIn comments, grab the services guide, inquiry like 7 days later, close them in 3 days after that. Like, it is crazy.
It's bananas.
So it's the perfect way, I think, because I don't display my pricing. I'm a big proponent of having pricing visibility. I don't want to hound anyone on a sales call. And because of the nature of what I do, I get a lot of people that have likely overinvested in other copywriters that didn't work out. And I get a lot of people that are coming more into like a premium style of messaging where they need to basically stand out in a crowded market. And so I kind of know this about people. And so I don't ever want somebody to feel like I'm just in your face badgering you to sell, which is why it's kind of set up in the way that it is. But people love it. And they end up reading, my Wallflower Fridays email that I send out. And then I send another sales email every other week or every week about, my ghostwriting services that I've never been told, like, you email me too much or whatever else. People are actually genuinely excited to get emails from me, and they're being nurtured at the same time. So it's like, what's not to love?
I think people feel like in the age of
newsletter businesses,
well, it's just unlimited information. Like, information is just so easily accessible. There's this like taboo about gating stuff like that. And I can see both sides of it. I appreciate your approach, not that because it's gated, but because of the the stage at which someone will usually be in before, like when they want that thing. It definitely creates a space between like people who are just kicking tires. But I can also see how there's a large gap between the time someone downloads that and they feel like they're ready to buy. I have a slightly different approach as within the educational email courses. It's basically, it's not that it's a services guide, but it's like all the thinking and all the frameworks. And it's in like a 5-day email sequence. And no, it doesn't include like pricing or anything like that. That's just like part of the site. But my approach is simple. Like, how do you train people to open your emails? Well, you just strip out information over time. And then there's intent buttons within them that get people, like if people fast forward through them, this isn't like a super novel idea. I didn't like invent email courses, but like it has worked really, really well for me. And I think that like just looking at your services guide, because I downloaded it, I think that I'm going to try like a hybrid approach here and I'm going to let you know how it goes because I like what you did.
I have clients who start using it and they're like, why the fuck have I ever done anything different? Because the other thing about the services guide, it is very rare that I have to get on sales calls because my services guide has basically bottled up all of the same conversations I'm having in sales calls. And anything that's in there is basically me saying, oh, I've said it more than twice in a sales call or more than twice in a DM or a comment or an inquiry form back and forth to someone. I'm bottling that up and putting in there so that people know. I think people want to feel informed before they reach out. And I have one client I just started working with. She was like, Kendall, I followed you since 2022. I have every version of your services guide literally downloaded and saved to my computer. So she has, if you ever want to see the like price increase progression, like all the different ways that thing's been configured. But I think the thing with a services guide or something like this as well that people tend to not realize is that in the online business world, this has been true for me. Like I'll get cash infusions, especially as a service provider, very randomly. And a lot of times I can't predict when they're going to hit. Like it just depends on when the inquiry happens. So I never like to think about things like, oh, someone may not be ready for that. I've had clients that be completely broke 1 month and be like, I literally can't afford to work with you. And then a month later, they're like, so for whatever reason, this thing popped off. And like, now I have 10K and I'm ready to give it to you. Like I get a lot of clients that they just like online business is so unpredictable. It's kind of blippy. And especially for services, it just kind of depends on who you meet, timing. Like it's not always quite as predictable, as I think we would hope, especially with like the climate right now. And so I always try to think of it as like, if someone has my services guide, a lot of times people are literally, my people are like really into manifesting money. So they're like, I write down in my journal.
Let's go.
Yeah. They're like, I am working with Kendall Cherry and she is writing my XYZ. And I've easily created X amount of dollars. And I've even had people be like, can you build a quote for me? I need to figure out how much money I need to manifest. Literally. So it's like,
whatever works, dude.
There's really not like a competition of like, oh yeah, I've got 12 tabs open of copywriters. I know I want to work with you. I just need to, close the cash first to do it. And so it's an interesting way of working with people that I think we don't always think that it can work like that behind the scenes. And I've gotten lots of people that tell me, they're like, yeah, I just need to manifest the money. Or I call them my longtime lurkers. They've just been like, never like anything because they don't want to enter a sales process yet. And they kind of are in stealth mode. And then all of a sudden you're like, where did you come from? And they're like, oh, I've been in your audience for like 5 years.
Have you found that's the truth? That's majority of the time. Majority of people who buy have never liked or commented on content, or very rarely, if ever, or like right at the end.
It depends how soon. I find that more often than not, my clients come from my email list and they're not always downloading the services guide first. So there's 2 entry points. There's the services guide, which obviously you get the services guide delivered, or some people just sign up because they want to read Wallflower Fridays. And so they're interested in that. There's there's like a footer at the bottom where I put the services guide. And I also include my little floating billboard of my capacity. So people can see that, but like my newsletter is very meta where I'm talking about storytelling and I'm talking about selling, but am I selling you on my ghostwriting services? I don't know. Like I am and I'm not. Like it's very blurred line and people love to read it. And so I sometimes just get people who've been huge fans of the Wallflower Fridays newsletter, or they've, heard me on a podcast or whatever else.
Well, Kendall, looking back, what's something you would have done differently?
Something I would have done differently. I honestly don't know. I don't want to be like, I wouldn't change a thing, because that's a lame answer. I would say I would have not been so hard on myself when I did make mistakes, especially for things that ended up kind of coming full circle. So like, for example, I spent a lot of money for they're called like a learning designer. It's basically someone who takes your brain and plugs it into a certification in a course. And I think I spent like $13,000 to work with them as a consultant to like take all this stuff that I was doing and like put it into some kind of framework. And I was thinking I was going to do a certification in a course. I also thought at the time that what I was doing was marketing and not selling, like didn't understand that. And so then worked with them. And then I was like, it's not a course or certification. And so I like put that down for a little bit and then ended up working with a client who had a course, quote unquote, but it was a written course. And so then I thought about it and I was like, actually, this material that I'm trying to teach, if there's some way for me to take the format that I would from a course and build it into a book instead, how could I turn that into like a better, more profitable, basically paid lead magnet? So it's not necessarily like anyone can learn how to write it themselves, but I'm sure we'll get clients, from that book as well. But I think just like allowing myself, like if I did make big investments, like it may not have turned out exactly and the format or the deliverable that I thought it was going to. There was always something like that's a really helpful practice that I have now where I'm just like, oh, like, because I could feel bad, like, oh my gosh, I spent so much money. But then I'm like, actually, this is much better. And it's allowed me to build the business plan to create my other books after this one. Because I think I have like probably like 8 books ready to write.
You got like Harry Potter, the whole series coming.
Harry Potter. I mean, like the first book that's on storytelling and sales literally has like a sister memoir, like a companion memoir about my story. And it kind of goes together. And then there's other memoirs and things like that and other business books. But that was always what I wanted to do once I kind of got into it. But I just never thought like writing books could make sense for me. And then that investment, again, even though it didn't turn out like a traditional course or certification, it's allowed me to create I'll say like a category defining book, big swing, but done in such a unique way where people who are not, business school graduates or who didn't really grow up like this, or maybe a little bit more your artist visionary types, to teach them how to sell in a way that actually in words that makes sense to them. But I would have never gotten there had I not worked with somebody who took my brain and just like allowed me to see, I call it like Kendall Cherry's cinematic universe, like allowed me to see that it's like not just one little thing. It's like this very robust, again, multi-concept, everything kind of goes together. Like that person really allowed me to see how big my brain is and how everything connects. So it was completely worth it. And then again, all the stuff I thought was going to be in a certification and a course is going into a book and its own little product suite with that.
This idea that you're talking about where you make an investment in something and you don't get out of it what you intended. I'm very guilty of feeling this way on like everything I spend money on. And someone recently told me, I mean, no matter how much you get out of it, you're always wondering, like, did I do the thing? Did I get like as far or whatever as I could have or should?
Yeah. Did I get the most? Did I squeeze all the ROI out of it?
Did I wring it out like a fucking towel? But someone said this to me the other day, and it was about books. They were like, you don't need to read a book to memorize every single line in the book. Like, get 1 or 2 things out of the book and move on with your fucking life, or go back and reread it like later. The best part about, like, take the course, hire the consultant. Like, the more money you spend, the more you're going to put pressure on yourself to get 100% or 150%. But what you're saying is like, hey, you made the investment and it created the space in your life for it to become this thing. Like, you got something really great out of it, and the potential is unlimited. So it doesn't always look like the thing we tell ourselves in our mind's eye that it's going to look like.
Yeah. I love what you just said there, where you're like, it creates the space in your life for something. Investments are essentially a container. So, and it's just an exchange of energy. So you put a certain amount of money toward a thing for a certain outcome. You may or may not get the thing that you thought the objective was going to be from that. It could be like, I've had this happen where I'll be like, I paid for XYZ mastermind or XYZ community. Didn't get the thing out of what I thought I would, but I ended up meeting somebody who got me on their podcast that then signed a bunch of clients or whatever wraparound way. Yeah. And I think the thing is true for books as well. And of course, I'm a writer, so I'm going to have this viewpoint. But like when I read a book, I read a lot of books. I probably read 2 to 3 books a week. And it comes with the job. It comes with the job.
You're good. I wish.
Comes with the job. I'm very strategic about it.
I read a lot of books, but they have a lot of like peekaboo flaps in them and they're made out of cardboard.
Oh yeah. It's good for your creation. Yeah, it's good for your creation. But the thing about books in general, same is true for children's books, especially if you get to a certain age. Children's books are actually written for the adults and that are reading them. The kids don't remember. So like those books, a lot of times, depending on the content you're reading, those are written for adults. Like children's book authors are writing for adults.
The same thing with like children's movies. Like Shrek is for the adults. Like
raise your hand if you've cried to Moana. Like, come on, it's written for adults.
They all are. Oh yeah.
They all are. And that's the thing with children's literature, especially, but any book, like those, I read so many books. Even if you read a book and you love it, you're not going to remember a scene by scene breakdown of what happened. They're intended and written in a way where you're going to get some kind of lesson or theme, and they're written where they appeal at the universal level, where what resonates with me may not resonate with you, but we're each going to have some kind of takeaway from it. And like, I'm a big book rereader. So I've read my favorite book of all time is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I've read it 8 times. It's probably like 600 pages, I think. But every time I read that book, I get something different from it. And I think the thing to remember here is books are essentially a portal as well. Like they essentially give you some kind of thing to take away or learn. They, if written well, are also the kind of thing when you reread them, they impact you differently, and you are going to get exactly what you need out of it at the exact precise moment. It's the same thing, like the same way consciousness works, and even the same way business works. If we all knew how we're going to make $1 million on day one, like we wouldn't be ready for it. Like we quite literally wouldn't have the foundations or anything else. So it's like growth over time and kind of what you're unlocking in perfect timing is the thing that allows you to connect with it. So it doesn't matter if it's books or a specific course, or you're listening to this podcast right now and you got some kind of nugget from it. Like that information was meant to find you in that moment for whatever's happening. You couldn't possibly store every single insight we've had in this episode. Like maybe you have it in your journal, but there's going to be one that likely sticks out the most. And that's true with any kind of content or what I call elevated art, where it's not just like, See Spot Run. It's like, Charlotte's Web, like Harry Potter, like these things that have more deeper subtext going on than just like, the non-obvious lesson, right? There's the non-obvious side of what they're trying to teach you. Yep.
I'm curious. One of the things that I want to do, like I want to write a book as well, but my approach is different. Instead of like writing it and then binding it and shipping it, we're going to write it in public and we're going to basically publish it one chapter at a time. We'll do like the paid Substack route. We're going to publish it one chapter at a time. And basically the concept is simple, right? How do you write a book that never ends? And then people would love to subscribe or buy a book that never ends. And you said you have 8 books in the hopper. Like
that's just, I have one book. My second book is it is currently plotted and ready to write. Like it has been ready to write for an entire year. That's just what I do. The
thing we're going to do is we're going to bind them, right? Like, and basically make like volumes or whatever, or whatever. So we'll bind, 8 or 10 at a time. Once we feel like we have the end to end, whatever the book covers for it. And then that will go to print. You can buy that specifically in physical print, but and then there's the digital copy available. And I think there's like an interesting monetization schedule there too, because traditionally you sell a book once, you make your $20 or whatever, you make your $9 after every other thing takes its cut, whether you self-publish or not. And then that's that. So it's like the idea of like, well, how do you monetize this in a way that's like people can buy it every month? So I don't know. It's interesting. We're on the cusp of like launching this project. So
yeah, this is so cool.
It's exciting to hear that you have so much content in the hopper, because it's something that we're working on.
This is a Kendall Cherry exclusive that I haven't shared this anywhere else yet, but I'm actually starting a podcast this summer called The Writer's Round. And it will essentially be for if you're writing a book, if you're curious about storytelling, but then also kind of the self-publishing and production process, all those things, creativity, kind of the artist mindset and development. It's really intended for people who want to monetize art and this kind of idea of elevated art. It's not just like, let me create a funnel and, trick you into buying this for $30 or whatever. It's like this same thing we were talking about, intentional art that's here to like, serve people in some kind of way and wake people up. Yeah, this podcast will be kind of my brain on that. I definitely want to have you, once you get your bearings over this, how you're going to do this, because this is super interesting.
It's ready. We need space in our life to write it.
What's the content? Is it fiction?
No, it's the How Solo Scale book.
Oh, nice. Okay. I was thinking you were going to like write some like choose your own adventure thing, which would also be cool.
No, I'm that's not me. I don't know. Maybe one day, maybe on my second act, but we're going to go with the How Solo Scale. Like we have the show, Eric and I have the podcast. We have the service, and now it's like, what is the pay to create model that goes with that? And how do we basically bind all the frameworks and the thinking and the stories? Yeah. And I don't want to put too many guardrails on like the type of content that we're capable of producing, but the idea is simple. It's like, how do we write a book that never ends? Give people the opportunity to buy it over and over and over and over and over again.
What I love about this too is it allows you to control someone's like learning journey. When you get a course, not sure how everyone else consumes courses, but a lot of people binge them and they go all in and they don't actually take the action that's going to get them the results. So what I love about this model is you can set this up to where you can say, okay, month 1, by the time your next one arrives, you should have done X, Y, Z. And there's like a urgency and a deadline to it of like the next one's coming in the mail, or you're going to get it delivered to your Kindle. So don't, you will mess this up. I think when we get courses, we sort of follow them, but the content's also available right there. So you're going to, consume all the information, but again, not take that aligned action that's going to get you the results that you want, which is, I think, maybe one of the flaws of a like typical course model. So
totally agree. Agree. I just also think like it's so saturated. People are super burned out on them. I know people will be burned out on Substacks and pay, like they can only pay for so many things like that. But I'm really excited about this model, and I'm really excited for your books and your podcast. I can't wait to listen, and I hope we do something. Kendall, I need to know one last thing.
Okay, what is it?
The sunflower.
Oh, what about it?
Why a sunflower and not a cherry?
Oh.
Okay, is it just too obvious for the cherry? You're like, no.
So the sunflower, my idea with this is we're all little sunflowers when we're most authentic, when we are our most like doing what we're meant to be doing. We are always stretching and walking into the sun and like finding our way toward the light. And so I think when we live our lives in a way that is our most authentic, we constantly, it's just like a very sunny, bright, very joyful experience. So that is the thing about the sunflowers. My people are sunflower people. Like they will see them out and they'll be like, I thought of you. I've even had clients like on kickoff calls. They're like, I couldn't buy you a bouquet, but I wore flowers on my t-shirt for you. So it's just this nice reminder, I think, too. What I love about a sunflower as well is the inside is brown. Most people don't think of it this way, but the inside of a sunflower is brown. It's kind of dark. Like we're not going to just be 100,000% happy all the time. But with the dark comes the light. And so I think it's a good reminder for people that even if you experience grief, there can be joy. If there's sadness, you can also find happiness in that. And that's a lot of what my writing is about. It's essentially like kind of bringing light into the planet, into the earth, whether that's through my business or like my other kind of more artsy creative projects. And it's also just kind of a fun thing. Like, you're doing brand building, right? When you use a sunflower, if you look at me on LinkedIn, I'm literally jumping with sunflowers in my hand, but you're doing brand building right when your audience echoes your brand back to you. And so they leave the sunflowers in the comments, they DM me the sunflowers, they email me back. I've had people send me photos outside their their neighborhood, some sunflowers show up, like there, it's kind of this like this thing that kind of brings people together, like a collective of people together. So that's what the sunflower is about. I do sign my name with cherries, so it's still there. When I get married, like I will probably keep my last name or maybe hyphenate because it's iconic. But yeah, the sunflower is more of a brand related thing.
I love that. There's nothing more gratifying than when people echo your words or your sentiment back to you.
Totally. If you're a writer type, like I'll get people who are like, I remember when you said this in this newsletter. I'm like, I did? I don't remember.
You're like, good for me. Great.
It's like, yeah, that really stuck with me. And I'm like, I blacked out. I don't remember writing that, but I'm glad it served you because that was the point. But yeah, it's fun when people kind of play along and participate. And so, especially in the online world where it can feel very like kind of weird. One of the questions Nick asked me before we recorded was, are you gonna be like how you are in real life? Like, are you really like how you sound? I'm like, no, I actually am. And I think that's a fun way to kind of bring the physical into the digital to where it does feel like more of a, if we were going to meet up in the street or something, like I would probably say hi to you. And so, maybe that online looks like I send you a sunflower emoji, you send me one back, but it still kind of feels like a real tangible thing.
I probably send you a pirate flag, but
hey, do you have everyone has an emoji.
Everyone does. And the thing I love about it the most though, is that it's like, you never really say any of the things that you use to describe the sunflower, like what the meaning of the sunflower is, but it comes across in all the content, it comes across in just you as a person. And then people echo that back to you. Mm-hmm. And it's the most gratifying thing in business. Like I never actually say the words plant your flag. I always tell people, like I just hashtag it.
I thought you were going to say, I never say pirates booty.
No, I don't say pirate booty either, but I don't say plant your flag like in conversations. I don't even really say it in the content. I just hashtag it. And it's something like, it's just like a footnote. It's not a subliminal message. Like it's very in there, but people come to me all the time and like, I need to plant my flag. And for some reason, like, you're like, I'm like, this is the thing. Like people get the whole thing. All the dots were just instantly connected.
Can I ask you, how did you come up with plant your flag?
It's as straightforward as it seems. When I first started Harness and Hone, the goal was simple. It's like help more people become known for the expertise they own. Now, I was doing it in a different way. I offered a slightly different offer and a different service. And I was a different person back then based on this was 2 years ago. So everything about life changes and you learn a lot when you're forced to make a living for your family. Yeah. But the concept was simple. Become known for an expertise that you own.
Where did that actual, those words come from? Did you see it somewhere?
It's not as juicy as it sounds. It's kind of obvious in that, if you look at anything that I produce or any of my own branded assets, I have an affinity for mountains. And when I was trying to create a logo for the business, it's all right, let's look for mountain thing. And I saw one that just was mountain with a flag right at the top. And I was and it just kind of struck me in that moment. I was like, all of these things, the messaging and the intent is all there, which is do the thing, plant the flag, become known for the thing. A lot of it was around creating new land or creating new ideas and new IP, but in the original point of view that I had. But the main thing was simple. It was just plant your flag. And I saw this little flag on that logo that is still the Harness and Hone logo.
Yeah.
I saw the flag and I was and it just kind of all snapped into place at once. So it's not super juicy origin story as much as it was an aha moment.
Well, reason I'm bringing it up, origin stories like that, it may not sound that juicy to you. I think it's pretty juicy as a consumer, I will say.
That's good to know.
Because I think the thing about a lot of these brand things, my sunflower thing was an accident. It was just something I had on a mood board one day on Pinterest during a brand thing. And then the designer brought it in. And then I was like, oh, I guess we could, play with this. But the best, these little magic moments like this, they're usually accidents. And they're usually things that your people really grasp even more so than I would have never known that this would have been the thing now where people ship me sunflower things to my home address. I would have never known that. But I think when it comes to this stuff, if you're, planting your flag or whatever kind of thing you're trying to do as a, solo person, those things are likely circling around you at any given time. It's not like they're completely from left field or even forced. Like there are things that are around you and they're probably until you start to look for it. And you're like kind of ready to be like, oh yeah, it's always been this thing. Like that's what I always uncover with clients too, is it's never some big like, oh my gosh, the thing I've never thought of. It's like this thing looming in the background, just kind of like waiting for you to finally notice it.
True. It was right in front of my face like the entire time.
Yeah. You just weren't ready to be like, oh yeah, plant your flag. And here we are.
And it's certainly a nod to like a publication and a group of folks that have had a major influence on my life and my thinking, which is the Category Pirates and their little pirate flag. So
see, there's more connection.
So there's a lot more to it. The more that I think about it, like the more connected it really is.
Yeah, think about it, and then the next time you're forced to think about your origin story, it's going to sound like even more.
It's going to sound way better.
Tight. Yeah.
Kendall, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a ton of fun, and I know more people feel seen on their own route because of it.
Yay! Thank you.
What would be your last meal on earth?
Oh, okay. I have the hackiest that you could not have asked me a better question. I have the hackiest hack of an answer. So I am obsessed with seafood. Obsessed. I eat it all the time. That's like the only thing I ever crave. So the hack here is to order a seafood tower, because then you get to try like 7 different types of seafood. And it's very bougie and very expensive. Like that's what I'm going out on. Give me some lobster tails, give me some oysters, crab legs, trout dip. I want all the things. But seafood tower would be my last meal.
All right. All right. Seafood tower, the sample, like the seafood sampler.
I have a goal. When I was in Portugal, I was in like a seaside town. I was like, I want to have a meal and have 7 different types of fish. And I ended up eating 9 because the bartender made friends with me and they thought it was nice. And so they're like, here's a couple extra little niblets for you. So that is a good day in my book. If I have more than 3 types, I'm happy.
Are you cooked fish, raw fish? Doesn't matter.
Mostly shellfish. I do eat some cooked fish, but I don't really like salmon, tilapia. It's like I want it to come from a shell. I'm Cajun also, right. So I like crawfish boils. Like that is me in my happy place.
I'm with you on the don't really care for the salmon.
Yeah.
But the shellfish, like mussels,
I can crush.
oysters, like all about it.
Yeah. 2 dozen oysters is a good day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Some places they don't know what they're getting into with bucket shuck around here.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
I'm with you. If whenever that meal comes, you give me a call. I'll have it. I'll share it with you.
Excellent.